Aziz doston, namaskar and welcome to the program organized by my very dear friends. And I am thankful to Jyotsna Sharma ji, who has taken up responsibility of moderating the program. Jyotsna ji, I am a very big fan of her. I watch her shows on TV, on YouTube, on everywhere, and she has a lovely way of expressing things. Jyotsna ji, over to you.
Thank you so much, Arif ji. Thank you for your kind words. And namaste to all the wonderful people out there, all the Netzians, the global community that we are interconnected, and the people who love peace and happiness in this world. Today, we are having this virtual town hall with Arif and Jankiaji's with the global Netzians. And of course, there is a reason behind. We are going to talk about the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan and the global repercussions. A very serious topic that concerns the entire world today. And we all know what is happening. Unfortunately, the recent development, recently a blast has taken place in Kabul, Afghanistan, near the airport. Again, ISIS-K is responsible for that. A lot of other things. We will be having this session, town hall, where, of course, you all would be invited to ask questions. We have our esteemed panelists and guests together with us as well. And with RFG, when we are taking this conversation in the town hall, we would like to inform you that we will be dividing this whole session into 4 segments. First is definitely where we will, take RFG's views on the current situation in Afghanistan. Second segment would be about the question where, why did Afghanistan army collapse without any resistance? And on this, of course, we will have our participants asking questions from Arif and Jakiaji's, and he will be responding back. Third segment would be about complacency of Pakistan and other rogue elements, and questions by participants, and Arifji's response again on that. And the fourth one would be about global repercussions. And of course, again, participants would be there to ask questions, and the response comes from Arif and Jankiaji's. Arif ji is a person very well known to the entire global community, and we know he is a person who is absolutely very strong, daring, and a person who's committed to the happiness, peace, and prosperity of the world. He does not move away from the tough situations, and his articulate nature of answering tough questions always appeals to all the people around. Having said that, Arif ji, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to moderate this town hall today. And first and foremost, let's hear it from you about the current development in the Afghanistan and the Taliban takeover. What is your thought process there? And of course, to the global Netzians who are maybe not aware of the entire things, when we speak about these happenings, a little background why this has happened, right from you.
Thank you, Jyotsna ji, for your kind words. Well, what is happening in Afghanistan has taken by storm. Entire world has forgotten COVID-19, all other stories, and there is only one thing that everyone is discussing is Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. Now, when we watch a movie, we always keep guessing that what is going to happen in next 5 minutes. But nobody knows what will happen in that movie. Only the script writer and director knows what's happening. So in Afghanistan also, we were all keep guessing that what is going to happen, and 350,000 Afghan forces who were well trained by America, and they will give a strong opposition to Taliban, and they will resist and this and that. But these were our guesses. The script writer and director knew what's going on and what will happen. The script writer is Pakistan's notorious intelligence agency, ISI, and the director is GHQ, General Headquarters of Pakistan Army. They knew what's going to happen. They knew how quick they will take over Afghanistan because it was a settled show There was no resistance at all in Afghanistan. Taliban, they started their attack on Afghanistan maybe in the beginning of August, but from 13 to 15 August, in 2 days, they took over all major cities of Afghanistan like Mazar-e-Sharif, Jalalabad, Kandahar, and then on 15 August, they took over Kabul without any resistance. So there are many things behind that. Instead of giving my point of view now, I would rather be happy to give replies to the questions, because it is an interaction with people, so it is better that I give reply to them. But I should tell one thing before handing over the podium to you, is that Pakistan army had a deal with many Afghan politicians and many Afghan army commanders to surrender in front of Taliban without any resistance, and that's why we did not see any resistance at all. I'll hand over to you, Jyotsna ji, and then it is better I reply to the questions of people.
Thank you so much, Arif ji. Thank you for this brief background of the situation, how things have developed in Afghanistan. Of course, very concerning. And more concerning is to see how people are running away from Afghanistan. We really do not know who exactly is escaping. The people who are in dire need to move out of the place is one. Second, we really do not know whether there are ISIS people, there are agents, there are terrorists who are also running away from Pakistan right now when this whole situation is happening, where America and many other countries are trying to bring back their citizen or, the Afghan supporters. Now the situation is, in this situation, the repercussions would be long lasting, and we really do not know how terrorism would breed now on. In different countries where people are taking refuge from Afghanistan, vetting of these people is really, really troublesome and, tough. And I have my own personal concerns. This is my personal question, in fact, about your overview before I give the stage to my esteemed, group members here. What do you think about this kind of escape that is happening, or the refuge that is being provided right now to people who are moving out of Afghanistan? What is your take there, sir?
Jyotsna ji, you are absolutely correct in your assessment. There was a story running over Twitter that a foreign reporter was reporting in Kabul, Afghanistan, and all of a sudden he disappeared. And his family was looking for him. And after 4 days, he called his family from United States, and he said that I was reporting on Kabul airport and I suddenly got a chance to board a plane, and now I am in America. So yes, this is happening. You never know who will be on board, because with the situation of chaos, and who is responsible for that? Unluckily, it is United States administration, because President of United States, Donald Trump, in November 2020 had announced that America will leave Afghanistan before 9/11, 2021. And President Biden took over in January, I guess. So from January till 31 August, the deadline, they had almost 8 months. It is enough period to bring out your citizens, to bring out your allies, to inform your allied countries, to bring out their citizens and their allies, and most importantly, to bring out the weaponry, that the lethal, sophisticated weapons of worth billions of dollars. You could do everything. It is United States of America, the most powerful country. 8 months are too much. But all of a sudden, the chaos that we saw, it is the administration of United States that is responsible for all this chaos. Now, here one thing is very important to note, that we read stories that United States is a champion of human rights. And they show stories that they are saving this dog, they are saving this cat. The army of America saw a bird dying, they saved that bird. But when the aeroplanes were taking off and people were over the aeroplane, on the wings, did not they know? The pilot did not know that these people will die if I fly now, but they did not care for those human beings. So human rights went inside the closet. The slogan of America that we will bring democracy in the world, in the dictatorships, went out of window because the democracy brought by United States in Afghanistan over 20 years, so many elections, President Karzai, and then now it was President Ashraf Ghani, and an armed gang of terrorists comes up, takes over the country, and America is not even condemning it. United Nations is not even condemning it. They are looking for a way to accept this gang of terrorists as legal ruler of Afghanistan. That's quite unfortunate thing that is happening. And the briefings that I hear from different United States authorities, like yesterday, the spokesperson of White House was giving a briefing and he was asked about Haqqani group, because Taliban is an amalgamation of different factions and groups with different ideologies. So Haqqani group is declared a terrorist group by United States and United Nations. So he was asked about the Haqqani group, and the spokesperson of White House says, and I have a video of that, that Haqqani group and Taliban are two different entities. At the very same time, Taliban spokesperson announced that the security of Kabul city and Kabul airport will be handed over to Haqqani group. So whom they are advocating? Have they become advocates of devil, advocates of terrorists? This is very unfortunate thing happening. So as your question was about these people escaping from Afghanistan, I think that the deserving people who are really in danger at the hands of Taliban, most of them are languishing in Afghanistan, and many of terrorists have left Afghanistan for safe countries. Like that happened in Iraq, Syria, and Libya, and many ISIS terrorists, they reached Germany, Scandinavia, and Central European countries when they opened their borders for refugees of Iraq, Libya, and Syria. And the consequences these countries faced, that their young girls were raped and Islamic Sharia movements started there and these things. So your question that what will happen if they reach America, Europe, and India and other safe countries. So these countries have to be careful before bringing people. And I don't say that don't bring people. You have to bring people who have helped you in Afghanistan to achieve your goals, which you failed to achieve, and then you abandoned those people. That's very sad.
Thank you so much, Arifji. See, the concern was because when we see those visuals, I barely see any women or children escaping out, those who really need the refuge. The situation of women in general in Afghanistan for many years and decades has not been good. I do not see them taking the facility or opportunity to move out of Afghanistan and find a safe refuge. What we see is only the mighty, the powerful, the strong men, they are running out. They are able to make it to the plains, jostling into the crowds, pushing each other, running. And maybe there are whole big goon networks who are facilitating the process of sending only these kind of men, we really do not know what's happening. And what concerns me is when these people, even the deserving, when they land into different countries, they might not be seen as poor people who have suffered, because there would be doubts in the people, in the minds of the global citizens, that are they genuinely the right people who have escaped out? Because we do not see women and children. They did not bring them. Why did they leave them behind? To get raped, to get killed, to be used as sex slaves? What is the purpose behind? Because ISIS-K, many other terrorist organizations would be active now. So that is the concern, and that was the reason why my question came up. And again, being a woman myself, my concern is about the women. In the whole entire network of these countries who claim to be peace lovers, when are they talking about the women in general and to bring them back to the right places? Why are they not raising issues about kids? Why they are not saying, okay, let's reserve this aeroplane only for women and children? And it's not happening. What would you like to say, sir? Because before I get some questions on this segment, I myself have these questions. I believe they are relevant and you may answer, sir.
Jyotsna ji, you are absolutely correct, and the visuals that we see is only of Kabul airport. If you go to border of Pakistan, Afghanistan, Chaman border, Spin Boldik border, you will see many more people than Kabul airport trying to get into Pakistan. And again, there are hardly any women or children, and only men are escaping. Men are still able to defend themselves, but women, Afghanistan's Taliban have declared Sharia law in Afghanistan. They have clearly said that women cannot work. Even the media women person are not allowed to go to their work. Tell me one thing, that the most per person percentage, most widows are in Afghanistan. Now, how will they survive if they cannot work? How will they raise their children? And then the announcement of Taliban's different groups that between 15 and 45-year-old women should be given to us for marriages or nikatul jihad. So these things are happening, and sadly, women are the weakest. Women internationally, they are very strong, but in Afghanistan, they are weakest segment of the society, and they are left behind. And again, the champions of human rights globally, they are not speaking on this topic. Hardly I see the question raised by you. I hardly see somewhere that people are worried for women and children. They are worried to recognize Taliban, how they can legalize, give legitimacy to the rule of Taliban. This is what they are worried for, not worried for women, children,
Absolutely.
and other Afghanis.
Thank you so much, sir. With this, I believe apparently we are coming to the close of our first segment. Having said that, of course, I had my questions, and of course, you gave a very wide insight. And we would go into segment 2, and I will open the platform for the participants to, raise your hands, and I will give you the stage to ask questions rather than me asking for you. So, of course, there were questions that came up from Atanu Sharma. There were questions that came up from Sanjeev Sharma, of course. There were questions coming from many other participants. So if you please raise your hand, I will give you this, opportunity. Otherwise, Atanu, please be ready. If you're there.
Yeah, I'm here. Hi,
Atanu.
Hi, Rizvi. So my question is regarding the collapse of the Afghan army. It of course came as a surprise to most of us or all of us. Not entirely expected, of course, but not entirely unexpected, of course. Why I'm saying not entirely unexpected is because of the fearsome reputation that Taliban and ISIS have built up over the years of executing their opponents' mass murders or mass executions, whatever you call them. And hence, we have seen a lot of tribal warlords and tribal members of the different tribes being executed. And this news has been coming up quite often. We have seen some results here and there. Now, the question, what I'm trying to say here is that while this is not entirely unexpected, but it was not expected also, given the fact that the Afghan army was trained by US, Indians, and in the past, you have seen that resistance was trained by Indian army, like for example, the Palestine resistance or PLO at that point of time, even the Sri Lankan Tamils. They have been good fighters, and here's an official army, not a militia, not a resistance, but an official army which was trained by no less than US and maybe some support by Indian army. I don't know the degree of support here. So they collapsed, and they collapsed in quite an embarrassing manner, so as to say, like, 3 or 4 days was all it took. Even the Indian insurgent groups would not collapse like this. Like, any insurgent groups in India or Pakistan would not collapse like this. Now, what I'm trying to say is, do we think, like, and we have seen one group coming forward and planning a resistance. Is this a kind of a strategic retreat by the Afghan army? And are they planning to march into and get reborn as resistance? Something like the France resistance in World War II? Or this was pretty much expected and we don't think we are going to see any kind of resistance or insurgents coming up, anti-Taliban resistance coming up in Afghan? I am kind of blank here, which is why I am asking this question. If it is obvious to you, please don't mind me asking such a question, like,
Thank you so much, Atanuji. Thank you so much for a very relevant question. Of course, indeed, this second segment is about the collapse of Afghan army. And of course, we definitely need guidance from Arif Jankia ji on this question. Arif ji, what is your take?
I agree with Atanuji. Problem is that many people are claiming that it is a defeat of India. So first of all, I should clear position of India that there is a CPEC going on in Pakistan made by China. Now, when China is making a road in Pakistan, China mortgages that road. And China gives a loan to Pakistan. They build that road and they say that for next 20 years or 30 years, we will get the toll money of that road. When they make a dam in Pakistan, they give loan and then they say that all the electricity for next 20 years produced by this dam will be sold by China and the profit will be taken by China. This is what China is doing in Pakistan, but what India did in Afghanistan was a pure humanitarian work, and they gave gift. Whatever they built in Afghanistan, the dams, the hospitals, the schools, the roads, all the infrastructure that India built, they did not do it for gaining profit or anything. So they gave a gift to Afghan people. It was not to Ashraf Ghani government, it was not to Taliban, it was for Afghan people. So India had no military or political agenda in Afghanistan. So there is no question of India getting victory or defeat in Afghanistan. The defeat is purely of allied forces, that is America and West, NATO and European Union. But nothing for India. India's role is equally appreciated by international forces, by Ghani government, and now Taliban in every press conference are saying that India played a positive role here and we welcome back Indians to complete their projects here. So there is no defeat of India or retreat of India. Now about the collapse and no resistance. Amarullah Saleh, who was vice president of Afghanistan and after escape of Ashraf Ghani, the president, constitutionally he is president and he declares that I am acting president of Afghanistan. He is in Panjshir Valley and he has announced that we will keep resisting and we will fight for our survival. And he gave a reason that why there was a defeat. First of all, he said that our supply line, which because Afghan is a landlocked country, so the major countries that are bordering Afghanistan are Iran and Pakistan. Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and these countries are politically or militarily not big countries. So Iran and Pakistan are major countries. So Amarullah Saleh said that a supply line of Afghan army was suddenly broken. And from Pakistan and Iran, there was nothing coming. Iran was not supporting militarily, but petrol was coming from Iran. And without petrol, you cannot move a single vehicle. So these supply lines broke. Then second thing he said that Ashraf Ghani kept saying to his military commanders that don't fight we are having an agreement with Taliban, and Taliban will go back and we will have a sharing government, and we don't want bloodshed, so don't fight, don't fight. And until last moment, even before his escape, a few hours before his escape, his order to his commanders was to not fight. So he said that's why we did not resist. The Afghan forces did not resist. Now, if some people are saying that the war is over, as Taliban are saying that war is over, war is not over. War is going on since 42 years, since 1979, and war will continue, because one thing is for sure, that the group of terrorists have taken Afghanistan, and common Afghans, the 40 million common Afghans, are not with Taliban, because we did not see a single photograph or video of an Afghan welcoming Taliban, presenting flowers to them, showing banners or placards that we welcome you. Because when there is a revolution in a country, if people support that revolution, they welcome their revolutionaries. But here, people are escaping. People are hanging on aeroplanes and trying to get out of this country with a fear. So it means that people are not with Taliban. And if people are not with Taliban, how long they can survive? Because it is a bunch of terrorists who are waging terror among people, and they think that they will get a victory. I'm sure that there will be a big resistance coming in. And then one thing more that we have to keep in mind, that Taliban is not one force. Taliban is an amalgamation of different terrorist groups. ISIS, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, Haqqani Group, Gulbuddin Hikmatyar Group, Rabbani Group. There are so many groups. Everyone has different ideology. Like, some groups are very much on payroll of Pakistan, very much faithful to Pakistan. Like Haqqani Group, like Gulbuddin Hikmatyar is a Pakistani Jamaat-e-Islami student, and he runs a very big terror group. Now, these groups will have an intention that they fight Pakistan's war. Now, Pakistan as a country is not capable of waging war anywhere, because they faced humiliation with Indian army in 71. In Kargil, they even left their dead bodies and did not accept back their dead bodies. So they are not capable of waging an open battle with any country. So they do proxy wars. They commit terrorism, and for this, Lashkar-e-Taiba, Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, Lakhvi, Hafiz Saeed, Jaish-e-Mohammed, you name, and so many terrorist groups. Pakistan provided these terrorist groups to Taliban to first get victory, and then it expects in return that Taliban will support these groups to wage their proxy war in India. In India, it is another part of it is not in the question, but I must say that Jammu and Kashmir of India is very much safe. And Indian Army's presence there since long time makes it safe, and the infiltration is continuously going on, but intercepted by Indian Army again and again, and Indian intelligence and Indian Army is very strong there. But Punjab border is in very much danger, because Punjab border is not controlled like military is controlling in J&K. So, and there are weapons are being sent by drones. So India has to be very careful that some segments of Taliban can help Pakistan's Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed and others to wage a war in India. Now, again coming back to resistance in Afghanistan, so these groups with different ideology, one group announced that women will be allowed to work. Other groups said no. One group said that women are not obliged to wear burqa, only hijab. Women are killed by other groups for not wearing burqa. So there are different ideologies. One says that we bring Sharia, but we are liberals and this and that. The other is breaking music instruments. And even one singer was dragged out of his home day before yesterday and killed on the streets. So they are with different ideologies, and they are with different groups. So, and then these groups are getting support from three quarters. China has announced that it will give financial help to Taliban. Iran has announced that it will give free petrol to Taliban to run the country. And Pakistan is giving them arms, intelligence backup, logistic. So how long they will continue, the West has to decide. As a US Senator today has said that America should give support to Northern Alliance to keep resisting and to wedge out the terrorists of Taliban. So I think that West has to come to this conclusion, because Pakistan's National Security Advisor Moeed Yusuf yesterday in press briefing said that West should not repeat the mistakes of 90s when they did not accept Taliban rule and they faced 9/11. So if they keep repeating that mistake, another 9/11 is going to happen. Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday said that Pakistan is a nuclear power, so we should be careful and we should get Pakistan on board everything. So these are the blackmailings that Pakistan keeps doing, and we have to make sure that the factories of terrorism are in Pakistan. You cannot bring peace in the region in Afghanistan unless you stop Pakistan producing terrorists.
So, Asif bhai, I had a follow-up question to that. What I was trying to say was, in Palestine area, like, we have seen Kurdish people putting up a very stiff resistance to the ISIS there, which are politically or otherwise aligned to Taliban. What they did was that the Kurdish women took up arms and they started fighting the ISIS over there, and they were pretty much successful. Can we think of such a scenario in Afghanistan, or that is pretty much an alien thought over here, given the culture or the situation in Afghanistan?
Well, ideology of Islamic extremism is a common ideology between all the terrorist groups, like Boko Haram in Nigeria, very far away, but they have same ideology. ISIS, Hamas, Taliban, and then the groups I mentioned, Lashkar-e-Taiba and all these things, they do terrorism on the name of Islam. They give target that we will bring Islamic Sharia all over the world. Like many Taliban commanders are saying that this is the only ideology acceptable, the Islamic Sharia, and we will bring it globally. So even groups in United Kingdom, in London where I live, Anjum Chaudhry, who was in jail for 2 years and now he is released a couple of years back. He lives on benefits, government provided financial assistance for job seekers allowance. But he told to Taliban that you should introduce jizya on non-Muslims in Afghanistan because you are victorious. So no matter where these extremists live, they have same ideology, they share the same ideology. And Taliban did one thing, that they did not impose jizya, rather they eliminated all minorities from Afghanistan. And now Afghanistan is 100% Muslim. There is only one Hindu, the priest, the Pandit of a mandir, who is living there. Otherwise, now there are no Christians. There are few. I'm receiving from different Christian NGOs request that I should help them to bring out some Christians from Afghanistan. But I'm an individual and I cannot do anything. I can just wish that they are out of Afghanistan, because that's the only way that they can save themselves and their faith. Otherwise, either they will be converted or killed.
Thank you so much, Arifji. And thank you, Atanu, for the follow-up question. Of course, we have Mr. Jay Munshi who has a question. Mr. Jay Munshi, you may ask your question, please.
Hello, Arifji. I have a quick question. And my question is pertaining to, as in what was actually the role that the United States should have played or will play in the future. Considering that in 2017, there was a survey conducted by Pew Research, and 99% of Afghans wanted Sharia law to be imposed. And this was within, of course, the area which was governed by the legitimate Afghan government back then by I believe it was President Ghani's government, and it was, this survey was conducted under the area controlled by US, NATO, and Afghan Ghani's this thing. So it wasn't in the area which was controlled by Taliban. So I assume that there was a sense of freedom in which people actually voted for it. So is a Western democracy a solution that the people of Afghanistan really want? Or is the modern value system being force-fed to someone who wants to have Sharia govern them? That's my question.
There are 2-3 different things in your question. First of all, if Sharia was liked by Afghans, why they wanted to escape like this when Sharia is coming to their doorsteps? So I don't know what kind of that survey was done, and then these surveys are not always accurate. About Sharia, I would put a question: which Sharia? Because there are 72 sects of Islam, and every sect of Islam has different Sharia. Shias have different Sharia than Sunnis. Sunnis, Barelvis, Deobandis, Wahhabis, Ahle Hadith, Ahle Sunnat. There are so many sects of Islam, and everyone's Sharia is different. Now in Afghanistan, there are 43% Pashtuns who are very much close to Deoband or Ahle Hadith sect. But there are about 15% Hazaras, they are Shias. There are 27% Tajiks, they are Sunni Barelvi. All these Sharias are totally different than each other. So which Sharia would you like to bring, first of all? The second thing is that we Muslims are very hypocrites. Sorry to say about it, but I would like to have Sharia, but not on myself. I would like to have Sharia in other countries. Like when Taliban came, Pakistanis were distributing sweets among everyone and giving congratulations that look, Sharia has come. But I ask question to Pakistanis that if Sharia is coming, the very same Sharia of Taliban is coming to Pakistan, and Pakistani people are asked to hand over their sisters and daughters between 15 and 45 years to them, would they be happy and would they be congratulating each other? So we are very hypocrite. What is Sharia for a common Pakistani? I will explain you in a short experience that I have seen, because I'm living in Europe since 31 years. My experience is that we Pakistanis especially, or Indian or Bengalis, the Muslims, Indian Muslims, when we want to leave our country, we come to Europe. The first thing we do on a plane is that ask beer and halal chicken. Then we reach Europe. We go to disco, we flirt with girls, we get married to a European girl, we get nationality, we work hard, illegal, legal, every means, we earn money, we earn nationality of a European country. Then we divorce that girl. Maybe we put 1 or 2 children in their laps and we leave them. Now we go to Pakistan or India or Bangladesh, wherever we belong to, and we bring our Desi wife. And then we have Desi children. When my daughter is born, then I'm getting my past in front of me. And I realize that when my daughter will be 18 or 16, she will also get flirted by boys. So now I start liking Sharia, and I impose Sharia on my family. I put my child in madrasa. My boy comes from school, wears Arabic dress, puts cap, goes to madrasa. My daughter is obliged to have hijab. I put a total control on my daughter. This is that I want Sharia now for my children, because I have spent my life, I've done all the sins, and now I have money, I have family, and I want Sharia. This is our hypocrisy. Now going back to those countries, like in India, who is advocating Sharia? Rana Ayyub, Arfa Khanum Sherwani. Arfa Khanum Sherwani every year goes to Paris on her vacations. Why does not she go to Umrah? If she is pro-Sharia, in India, communal leaders, communal Muslim leaders, the Sharia is a political slogan, only for downtrodden people to keep them downtrodden. Now, for example, the chief of Tablighi Jamaat in India, Saad, when he was looked to be arrested, when his house was raided, we found 1,000-meter swimming pool is in his home. So these Muslim communal leaders get rich, their children get education in Europe, but the common Muslim, the downtrodden Muslims are given slogan of Sharia. Same thing happens in Pakistan. The army generals in their mess in the evening, whiskey glass in hand, and they are thinking that how to make fools of Pakistanis on the name of Islam. So Sharia
Thank you
is
so much.
they don't like Sharia. They cannot live in Sharia, but they want to impose Sharia on others. There are very few extremists who believe in Sharia, but again, these extremists are divided in different sects, and every sect has different Sharia. Many sects are quite liberal, many sects are near to prophets, many sects are near to Quran, many sects have different ideology. There is something called Sufism. Sufism is quite much derived from Hinduism. So which Sharia do you want? If Sufism Sharia, I think that is comparing to other sects is much coexistent with a philosophy of coexistence. So this is the story of Sharia, and I think that in Afghanistan that survey was done, but the result is that not a single Afghan has welcomed the Sharia law of Afghanistan's Taliban. They all are hanging on aeroplanes to escape from Sharia. So they don't want Sharia.
Thank you so much, Arif ji, for these insights. Of course, quite a expanded version of the answer, and it interrelates to what trickles down to the Afghan army's collapse and everything, and how it shows the segment of the the Muslim population all over the world and the thought process.